Hey people, Shinobi no Kami here. In this fanfic, most people believed the Yondaime to be Naruto's father, but they were wrong. His actual father had to watch as Kyuubi was sealed into his newborn son and sent into a world of hatred. And now, he wants vengeance. Check the description and give a sub to my thumbnail maker God Kage Theories. Hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and if you want to make suggestions or something else, tell me in the comment section. Now let's roll the intro. Chapter 51. The night was a dark one in the port town of Shibata, a fishing village and fire country that prided itself on staying out of the affairs of the rest of the world, as they only wanted to live their lives in peace and enjoy their craft. Now and then the young folk will leave to see the bigger parts of the land, but most stayed as it was their home that they loved. The town was protected by its militia, a force of able-bodied men whose bravery could not be questioned, and they were well trained to fight off anyone who dared to interrupt the peace, whether it be bandits or the occasional pirates who attacked the port. The ruler of Shibata was an elderly man who had founded the village by the name of Ma Jing, in his 80s, who thought of the village and its inhabitants as his family. In his early years he had been quite a ninja, but now he wanted to enjoy the remainder of his days in peace and solitude. He and the village had no clue of the horror that was going to rain down upon them. Ma Jing was walking on the walls of the gateway that merchant ships and their own went through. It was often patrolled by the militia. By the night was a cloudy one, as the moon was blocked out and a heavy fog was on the water. Unknown to them, a large ship was approaching the village, using the fog as a clever hiding spot. Huh, one of the patrolmen said as he looked into the fog. Jing-sama, I think there's a ship out there, he said, calling to him. The old man walked up to him and, glancing out, then saw the ship exit the fog. It was a long ship, well over 50 feet. What's a ship like that doing here? It looks like one you'd see at Wave or the Land of Water. One of the patrolmen asked, not understanding. She must be ignorant of our ways. No ship is allowed to dock after nightfall. Ma Jing said as he looked at. I don't see any colors on here, I can't tell where she's from. One militiaman said. Pirates. Another one said bitterly, reaching towards his sword. Ma Jing, knowing full well the tricks of pirates, looked at his men. I do not think it is pirates. Maybe she was unable to reach her destination and stopped here tonight. One of you use the flags to ask her what her business is. On board the unknown ship several men were getting ready to make their move. On the deck was a man wearing violet robes who smirked as he saw the one of the patrolmen using flags to ask them. Is everything ready? He asked the man standing next to him, who bowed and answered. Good, send them a welcome they and this piece of useless land will not forget. Sima Zun looked out at the fools as his plan was going perfectly. She's not answering Jing-sama, all her crew must be asleep. Maybe she anchored out, a patrolman said as he had gotten no answer. Ma Jing frowned as this was odd. Suddenly his old ears thought he heard a twanging sound. He then felt something hit him in the chest and the gasped shock of horror from his men. He was unable to answer his loyal men as he felt himself falling to the floor and everything going dark. Jing-sama, one man said as he had been hit in the heart by an arrow and was now dead. The militia went to their leader, but they were suddenly struck down by raining arrows. Now, light this place ablaze, Sima Zun shouted as his archers then fired arrows on fire into it and on the building, setting it on fire. A mass amount of panic went into Shibata as the villagers ran out of their burning homes in panic as to their horror they saw their beloved home on fire. The militia sprung into action, working to put out the blazes, and most of the villagers also helped them, using buckets of water to throw them on the flames, and they appeared to be getting it under control. But then they heard a loud battle cry, and out of nowhere a large force of many men appeared and attacked them. The unsuspecting villagers were caught off guard and were cut down where they stood. It lasted for several horrifying minutes as the invading force overpowered the militia and destroyed everything in the town, and sending the villagers fleeing from their homes, the one place they thought they would never have to leave. As Shibata was being raised, Shimazune sat near a table on the deck and ate his dinner as he watched on with amusement. His plan had worked perfectly. First they set the town on fire, and then while they were occupied in trying to put it out, a second force had attacked them. He took a sip of sake and gave an order to his men not to destroy the boats as they would need them. As he saw the once peaceful port village being consumed, he smirked as they had made themselves known. Soon the land shall know my brilliance, and the land of earth shall reign supreme, he said, laughing as they were now done and prepared to head home. At Iwagakure, the new ruler of earth, having taken rulership a week ago, sat on his throne and looked at his 6 lieutenants, who for only 5 were there for now. At his side was a man and a woman who, like him, were also followers of Jashin. He wore the armor of the former ruler, but it had been changed to fit his liking, the once silver armor now black, and the metal mask shaped like the face of a demon. His soulless eyes that showed looked at them all. Suddenly the door opened and in stepped Shimazune, who had a bundle wrapped in a cloth, returning from his conquest of Shibata the previous night. He stepped forward and bowed to him. I bring treasures from our victory, he said, and then threw the bundle on the table, and it revealed itself to be the head of Ma Jing. Shibata has been wiped out as you commanded. HMPH, said Lu Xiang, the mighty warrior, not impressed. Anyone can wipe out a tiny village filled with worms. Enough, Kage Sosano said. The first step has been fulfilled. Let the fools of the land think that the pitiful village's destruction was a coincidence, it being wiped out by a group of bandits and pirates. Now we will make our next move. To put the land in Jashin's grasp, said the man next to him, who was known as Zhongmao, a follower of Jashin who Kage had contacted and had joined him. He was a devout follower and would do anything to achieve the domination of the land for his master. The woman beside him giggled. Hey, of course, Kage will see to it that the idiots of this world shall know the greatness of our master, said the woman who had purplish pink hair and was known as Da Zhao. Although she was rather beautiful, she was a malicious woman who took delight in torturing her enemies. Lu Xiang stood up then. Let me lead the next assault, Kage. I'll show you how a true warrior slaughters his enemies, he said, grasping his halberd as he wanted to prove himself and his power to all and remind them he was the strongest warrior in the land of earth. Very well, Lu Xiang, you shall be in charge of the forces for our next battle. I shall tell you when to attack and where at, Kage Sosano said, and he then stood up. The era of the ninja is coming to an end. The time has come for a new age, and the land shall kneel as the age of Jashin shall last for a millennium. The next day at Konoha. It was awful, Hokage-sama. Our homes and our village have been wiped out by them, said a sobbing man with his family who earlier had appeared at the gate and had collapsed, claiming in a panicked voice that his home and his village had been destroyed. They killed all who got in their path. I don't know if there were any other survivors, he said as he held his wife who held their infant daughter. Tsunade looked at the horrified man and his family as he had told her what had happened. 2 nights ago the port town of Shibata was unexpectedly attacked and, from his words, burned to the ground. It looked like a cohesive attack by bandits and pirates, but the man said they weren't interested in their belongings as they had destroyed the village. The flames were so high and hot it felt like we were in the depths of. That's enough, Tsunade said and mentioned to Shizune. Shizune, get these people something to eat. I'll look into this and see what we can find and who did this and pay them back for what they have done. Shizune led them out and left Tsunade inside by herself. She looked at the region of the map where Shibata was at. It was an awful tale what had just happened. She had heard and seen many villages and towns being wiped out in her youth. Normally one might place the blame on bandits as they were a threat all too common, but they seemed to have been working together, which wasn't often done by bandits and in a controlled force instead of a raging mob. They didn't even steal or want any valuables as they had burned the village to the ground, killing all in their way. From what she had been told, first they set the place ablaze with a fire attack and then ambushed them. A clever tactic which was beyond the tactics of bandits. It might have been an unlucky coincidence, but a feeling in her gut told her that this was greater than the destruction of a small port town. She sighed and shook her head, wondering how Jiraiya managed to get her to do this again. At Odogakure. You wanted to see me, Otusan? Naruto Uzumaki asked his father as he stood in his chambers. Orochimaru smirked at his son and looked up as he was staring at a report. Yes, I have a small mission for you that I want you to do. You know of the 4 gates? He asked, and Naruto nodded, immediately catching on. The 4 gates were the entrance ways into the land of sound. North, south, east, and west. 4 gates that were under the command of the Sound Four, each having a headquarters there. If Naruto remembered correctly, Tayuya was in charge of the North Gate. I want you to go to the South Gate and see what is going on there and give me your report when you come back. This is a solo mission and shouldn't be too difficult. If you want, you can take a partner with you if you want someone to accompany you. He said. Alright, I'll head that way right now. Naruto said to him and bowed respectfully and left. The South Gate, if he remembered right, that was under the command of Jirobo. It didn't seem like too much trouble, so he might as well take someone with him to keep him company while he went. He went into a restaurant and looked around and smiled when he saw a certain redhead eating a bowl of ramen. Hey Tayuya, he called out and got her attention. She turned her head around and noticed him. What do you want, Naruto? She asked him as he sat next to her but didn't order anything. I'm going to the South Gate in a little bit, wanna come with me? He asked her. South Gate, ain't that Lard Ass's spot? She said. Sure, why not, I don't got anything to do anyway. Great, whenever you're ready we can go. Naruto said with a smile, glad she was coming with him. Yeah, she replied as she paid for her meal. Later the two left ZODIVK and going at a slow pace headed towards the South Gate. They assumed they had nothing to worry about as what could possibly happen. Unknown to them, a force of men on horseback being led by Lu Xiang, who was riding in the front, were heading towards Sound. It was a relatively small force, but Lu Xiang had only wanted that many, claiming any more would be overkill. So it looks like Kage wants me to send a message to Sound. He said to himself as he hoped to wet his blade with fresh blood, and if he was able to find big holes in the defenses he would gladly go on further than he had been ordered. Of them all he was the only one who didn't call Kage by the proper title now that he was the ruler of Earth. I don't know how exactly you are so powerful, Kage, but it doesn't mean you're my master. I shall show you my might this day, he said, and then kicked his horse into a run, and the others quickly did so as well as they attempted to keep up with him. Lu Xiang grinned, feeling his desire for battle grow even stronger as they neared their destination. So how come you don't go to your gate very often? Naruto asked Tayuya later on in the day as they were walking to the South Gate. I don't usually want to bother with that crap. I just tell whoever I leave in charge to do a good job or I'll rip their balls off. She replied. That's one way to make sure they do a good job. Naruto said dryly. Jirobo's gate shouldn't be too far from here. I doubt anything's happening. Tayuya said, a bit bored. Naruto went to nod when he thought he saw something. He looked up and saw something in the air a distance away. Smoke, he said, not understanding. Tayuya noticed it as well. Damn, when there's smoke, Tayuya stated to say when Naruto finished it. There's fire, come on let's go, he said, and the two ran off. They stopped at the top of a hill and saw where it was coming from. There was a battle going on and a fire had spread out. They looked down and saw the South Gate under attack from mysterious enemies. Who the hell are these shitheads? Tayuya shouted, not understanding what was happening. Come on let's go, Naruto said to her, and they charged down the hill into the area. They saw who was attacking. They had brown uniforms and a mask to cover their faces. There was a good number of them and they were engaged in battle with the Sound Nins at the gate. One of the attackers attempted to attack them, but Naruto quickly summoned his Kusarigama and hit him in the head with the metal ball. Shit, watch out, Tayuya shouted as a boulder nearly hit them. Another attacker appeared and doing a series of hand symbols sent another boulder. Tayuya quickly got out her flute and getting her doki out smashed it to pieces before it could hit them. They then saw Jirobo in the midst of it, his cursed seal activated. Single-handedly he fought off the attackers. He turned and saw them. Hey lardass, what the hell is going on here? Tayuya shouted at him as they meet up. Tayuya quit cursing, he said, chastising her even in the heat of battle. These guys attacked us out of nowhere, I have no clue where they came from. I'm trying to drive them back but they keep on coming. Looks like you need a hand, Naruto said, looking around at the battle. Tell me about it, help me drive these maggots out of here, the South Gate won't fall as long as I'm breathing. The battle that raged on between the defending Sound Nins and the unknown attackers had no clear winner, as it was mass confusion, as at times the attackers would disappear underground and attack elsewhere. Naruto ducked a thrown boulder and fired a shuriken at his enemy, but it was deflected off of his skin by rock skin he had placed on himself. He casted a sound jutsu and it hit him and knocked off part of his armor. Naruto, realizing this, called out to the others to use their jutsus to remove their armor so they couldn't deflect their hits. Tayuya used her doki and used them to break apart and stop their attacks, and she grinned when they hit the assholes with their clubs. Jirobo, proving his strength, told the injured sound nins to retreat as he covered them, and with his powerful blows he knocked out anyone who got in his way. It appeared that victory was near when a voice called out, "Can no one give me a decent challenge?" A loud voice shouted, and riding on top of a horse and wielding a halberd that had fresh blood on it single-handedly was a tall figure who struck fear into his own men who didn't try to get in his way. He rode into the center of the field and dismounted, and it was the tallest man Naruto had ever seen, well over 6.5 feet tall, and his weapon nearly as tall as himself. A few sound nins cautiously surrounded him, and he smirked and tightened his grip on his halberd. One of them charged him and he spun around and decapitated him. Another did so as well and was met with a powerful fist, knocking him out. The rest charged him as well, and he twirled his weapon and wiped them all out with one attack. And the way he did it, he appeared to have done it with no effort at all. Jirobo, seeing this, charged him, and Lu Xiang, who had entered the main fray himself, saw him, and the two engaged in a contest of strength. The two engaged in a battle of brute strength with all onlookers watching on. They struggled for a moment, but to the surprise of all, Lu Xiang managed to overpower Jirobo, and then picking him up threw him into the wall of the gate. Naruto and Tayuya looked on in shock, as no one had ever managed to overpower Jirobo before in brute strength. Jirobo picked himself up and shook his head. "Come on, maggot. I'm dying of boredom here." Lu Xiang taunted him, and Jirobo glared at him, and suddenly his body changed. His orange hair became longer and his skin turned brown and his pupils turned black as he tapped into the second level of the cursed seal. "I'll kill you for invading my territory, you worm." Jirobo shouted at him and charged him. Reaching into the ground, he picked up a large piece of land at him, who evaded it. Jirobo charged him and threw punches but was unable to land a hit on him. Lu Xiang countered by scoring some minor hits on him and spilling some blood. "You scum! Your head is mine," he shouted, and prepared to cut him in half with his halberd. He twirled it in half and brought it down, which would have sliced him clean in half, but Jirobo unexpectedly grinned, and suddenly Lu Xiang was trapped in a large dome of earth. Jirobo's arms glowed and he put them on it as he went to absorb his chakra, as there was no way he could break through. Jirobo smirked after a few seconds, thinking he had killed him, when suddenly he was blown back and the dome exploded and revealed Lu Xiang, and the blade of his weapon was glowing. "Do you really think I'll die to such a weakling attack?" he shouted at him. Jirobo cursed and charged him, ready to hit him. Lu Xiang smirked and got into a stance. Naruto then saw what he was going to do. "Jirobo, wait. It's a trap," he shouted, but was too late. Lu Xiang's blade grew and a beam of energy fired out of it, hitting Jirobo squarely in the chest. Jirobo felt severe pain and clutched his chest when he reappeared behind him and cut him cleanly down the middle from behind. Jirobo transformed back to his regular form and slowly fell on his stomach, and Naruto and Tayuya gasped in silent shock when they saw that he was dead and blood formed around him as the leader of the South Gate had fallen. "Worthless scum, not fit to have his blood on my halberd," Lu Xiang said, and then saw Naruto. "What's wrong, kid? Do you want to join him?" Naruto's eyes were now red and he suddenly charged him at surprising speed. Lu Xiang narrowly avoided his kusarigama and smirked. "If you insist, I'll kill you as well," he shouted and swung his halberd, but to his surprise Naruto ducked under it and then leapt up into the air and dived at him. He swung his halberd but was surprised when he didn't hit and instead saw Naruto standing on it. Naruto leapt off it backwards, landing on his feet. "HMPH. If you can manage to evade my halberd, you must have some skill, boy," he shouted, as it wasn't very often he went up against someone who lasted more than 5 seconds. "Lu Xiang, do not engage the boy, that's an order," said a voice in his head, and he recognized it as Kage's. He growled as he wondered how he was communicating with him from so far away. "You have done your mission. Do not prod your halberd in too deep, now is not the time. Return to Iwa this instant," the voice demanded loudly at him, and he growled. "Fine, I'll go," he muttered to himself and then spoke to them. "Consider yourself lucky, I have to go now. But next time you won't be so," he shouted, and getting on his horse galloped away with the rest of the attackers. Naruto cursed as he was gone before he could do anything to stop them. "Damn it, this is the kinda thing I didn't want to happen." he said quietly as he looked at the scene with the injured and fallen, especially one of the Sound Four who had died. Whoever those guys were, they had made a big impact this day. He looked at Tayuya who was helping some of the others who were injured. She looked up at him and she walked over and put a hand on his shoulder to comfort him. Naruto grabbed the hand with one of his as they looked over the scene. It was just supposed to be a routine checkup. What they got was the death of one of Orochimaru's top men and others. They made a burial site for Jirobo and the others who had been killed with the help of the survivors. As Naruto looked at the graves, he couldn't help but feel that this was his fault for some reason. Rain clouds started to appear overhead and slowly began raining as Naruto and Tayuya slowly made the trip back to ZODIVK to tell everyone what had happened. Chapter 52. At nightfall in Iwagakure, two figures were walking the quiet streets. The first one wore violet robes and he had short brown hair which he covered with a hat. Beside him was a female with purplish pink hair and pale skin. He doesn't seem to care about our latest victory. I don't understand why he ordered Lu Xiang to not go further. Sima Zun said as they walked. Hey, this is all just part of his plan. Kage-sama knows there's nothing to celebrate beating weaklings. Dajao said as she walked ahead. But he would at least show something. The ruler of Odo's south gate was killed and he reacted as if it was nothing. Until the south gate is fixed, the path is ours. He would at least tell me what he's planning. I am his strategist, he said with a frown as he didn't like not knowing what he was doing. Currently he's speaking with Lord Jashin as to go over who should be our next target. But I am a bit disappointed he didn't let me come with him to his chambers, she said with a pout. Sima Zun shrugged. He didn't like the fact that the ruler of Earth was a servant to that mad figure, but only a fool would say that with all those fanatics around. No matter, if everything went right and he timed it perfectly, this age of Jashin they babbled about would be a short-lived one. In the private chambers of the rock cage, Kage Sosano sat at a table, his right palm over the crystal ball. He had his eyes closed and meditating. The mask was off as he called forth his master. The land of Earth is yours to command, my master, he said as the crystal ball was filled with a black smoke. What is it now that you desire me to do so that I can impose the will of Jashin, ruler of this land? There was silence for a moment, but then the 8 rings on his hands glowed and he heard a voice in his head. Build me an army worthy of Jashin. The voice commanded and then echoed in the room. Slowly it faded out of the room and his eyes opened and slowly he removed his hand from the ball and took a seat, his arms folded on his lap. His door opened and in stepped Zhang Mao, who bowed before him. What orders from Lord Jashin? What does he command? He asked him. Kage looked up at him and an evil smirk showed on his features. We have much work to do. The setting then changed to a different area underground in the vast training area that Iwa had. Much work was being done as weapons and armor was being made. Kage along with Dajao, Lu Xiang, Zhang Mao, and Sima Zun walked through the cavern as they looked at what was happening. Furnaces burned as blacksmiths pounded on metal with heavy hammers as fresh iron and ore were being brought to create weapons of power. One great advantage Earth had was their mines, as they were able to get resources for weapons easily and make them. A nearby pile of weapons was being looked on at the quality of them. Swords, spears, axes, pikes, bow and arrows, and other weapons were being mass-produced. As they walked, none dared stood in their path. The 5 walked as each looked on as they were preparing for something big. We are fortunate enough to have such vast resources at our disposal, my lord. An underling said to him as they looked and saw some of them training. However, I am afraid we cannot have them all ready. Kage turned his head to look at him. Work the furnaces day and night, I want them armed and ready in 3 weeks. He said, and his tone of voice indicated it was pointless to argue. The underling shook his head at the task they were being given. It would be impossible to get them all ready in that amount of time. That is impossible, my lord, we will need at least 2 months and we'll be lucky to get even close. It cannot be done, we lack the fuel to feed the fire, even with our vast amount of iron and ore it is useless if we do not have much fuel. Earth has always suffered due to it being so mountainous and with the lack of. He was then grabbed by his shirt and hoisted up into the air by one arm and he was face to face with Kage. If you require fuel, then I shall give it to you. He then dropped him and aiming one of his rings at the main furnace fired a beam of flame into it and the flames leapt up all the way into the air, surprising and startling the blacksmiths who backed away as some of the flames were near them. Da Zhao let out a shriek of joy as she looked on as the fire burned brightly as the others looked on speechless. "There is your fuel," he said coldly to him who got off the ground. "The world that we know of is coming to an end, it shall be buried along with anyone foolish enough to oppose the new world that Jashin has envisioned," he said as the five looked on. At ZODIVK, the moment that Orochimaru saw Naruto and Tayuya walk in his chambers, he knew something was wrong by the way they walked and the way their shoulders slouched. Something wasn't right. "What's wrong?" he asked as they walked forward. Naruto looked at his father and then spoke up. "The south gate was attacked during our meeting, and Jirobo was killed in the battle." Orochimaru stood up, his eyes widening in shock. "Jirobo has fallen?" he asked, his face slowly becoming furious. "Who did this? Was it the leaf?" he demanded to know. "No, it wasn't them, Orochimaru-sama," Tayuya said. "We don't know who it really was, as the battle was going on when we got there. We couldn't see who the bastards were as they wore masks to cover their faces, except for the one who killed Jirobo, and we've never seen him before. They ran off after killing him on horses." Orochimaru clenched his hand into a fist. "Some rabble dare attacks his land and slay one of his best men. He would make sure that whoever did this would pay with their lives once he found out who they were." "Otusan," Naruto said, and he calmed down a little and looked at him. "Right now there is a vacancy in the Sound 4. I want to fill that spot and take Jirobo's place. It's the least I can do since I wasn't able to do anything when he died." Orochimaru stared at his son. "Very well, but I cannot just make you one of them, you'll have to pass a test just like the rest of them did when they formed the group." Naruto nodded at him. "Okay, I'll accept whatever I have to do." "You don't even know what you have to do and you already accept it?" Orochimaru asked him. "You'll have till tomorrow to get yourself ready. Meet me and the rest of the Sound 4 tomorrow at the training area. There I will give you your test that you must pass in order to become one of the Sound 4. Naruto nodded and bowed respectfully to him, and the two left. Orochimaru sat at his desk and looked over a map of the land, and his attention turned to it as he thought of who would be foolish enough to dare attack Sound and kill his men. From the description, it wasn't Konoha, although he wouldn't put it past the Leaf to try something like that. Suna, they were a possible choice as they had agreed to the invasion and it didn't turn out exactly the way they planned, especially if they found out he had assisted in the death of their Kage. His spies had found nothing out from them as it was a virtually lockdown. Suna was with not even a whisper escaping. Aim, the only reason they would provoke an attack would be if Akatsuki had the other 8-tailed beasts, and he doubted they would do it as he knew they didn't have the rest of them. He knew the leader, almost as well as he knew himself. Unless he had all the rest he wouldn't try to attack. He looked at the other remaining nations that had the power to attack him. Cloud, their interest was only in the Byakugan as they desired the secrets of the Hyuga clan, they had no vendetta with him or Sound. As he studied the map, he looked at them all as a potential enemy that he would one day face. In Konoha the next day, Enko Mitarashi stuffed a dumpling into her mouth at the restaurant. She chewed and swallowed it and went to eat another one. The building she was in was crowded, but the Jonin was off in her own little world at the moment. But her ears were listening and caught on. At a table near her, a group of people were talking about something, not even bothering to lower their voices. "Have you heard the rumors? There's talk that someone attacked the south gate of Odo and killed the one in charge there." A man said. "I hope it's true. Every one of those Sound scum deserve to die." A woman said as well, her voice filled with venom. This caught Enko's attention and she paid more attention. "Yeah, with that gate down the way they way is open, the council should assemble all the ninjas and have them wipe out ZODIVK now that it's defenseless." Another man snapped. "They would, if that Hokage wasn't in charge. How could she not let us get revenge for what they did at the exams?" The first man spoke again. Enko heard enough and rolled her eyes in disgust. A part of her wanted to introduce them to some scaly friends of hers. She did hate Sound, but only the ruler of it. The rest she could care less about except for one boy that she was concerned about. But the news did interest her. Someone had attacked the territory of Odo. Who would be crazy enough to do that? She had heard from Jiraiya that Tsunade had been keeping the council in check, so not even Danzo could have sent a force there without her knowing about it. It wasn't them as far as she knew, as this was the first she had heard of it. A pink-haired girl suddenly sat down into a chair at the table she was using and slumped her head against the table, and Enko's eyes narrowed in amusement. "You know, you should ask someone if you can use their table when they are occupying it," she said dryly. Sakura Haruno slowly opened her eyes and looked up at her. Hi Anko-san, I didn't see you. You look exhausted, kiddo. You would be too if your sensei's idea of a light workout was throwing super strong punches at you and she isn't holding back at all. Sakura responded. No thanks, you know Sakura, you don't have to push yourself like this. Anko said as she remembered one training exercise that had her covered with ultra-sensitive snakes, and if she as much as flinched they would bite her. Sakura was silent for a moment. It's something I have to do, I can't do anything like this the way I am now. I have to get stronger if I hope to succeed. She then put her head down on the table. She had determination, Anko had to give her that at least. Well, I can't stop you, but don't try to get in more than you can handle or you might end up regretting it later. She said to her. Sakura didn't respond as she kept her head down. Hey Sakura, did you hear me? Anko asked her again and again, no answer. Hey forehead girl, you deaf? She said, calling her by that nickname she hated. Anko snapped her fingers at her, trying to get her to respond. A frown crossed her face and she went over to her. Sakura, hey, you alive? She said loudly and then heard light breathing. She tilted the girl's head and then discovered what was going on. Sakura was asleep. Apparently she lost all ability to stay awake after she got here. Anko laughed in amusement and picked her up and put her on her back. The least she could do was take Sakura back to her home, then let her sleep on the table. At ZODIVK, Naruto took a deep breath as he stepped towards the training grounds as he was prepared to take the test that he had to pass in order to take the vacated spot in the Sound 4. He did not know what he had to do, so he was expecting anything. It could be anything he had to do, so who knows. He made his way to the meeting place and saw his father and with him the rest of the Sound 4. Orochimaru noticed him and called their attention. So you have made it, very well, the test shall now begin. Naruto, if during the test you feel you cannot win, you may surrender. However, if you fail it, you will not get another chance to do so. This shall be your only chance and you must win if you hope to take Jirobo's spot. Is that understood? He said to him, letting him know what he was getting into. Naruto nodded, showing no signs of hesitation. I understand. Very well, Sakin. Kidomaru. Orochimaru called out and the two stepped forward and bowed. The two of you shall face him in a 2-against-1 fight. If he manages to defeat one of you, Naruto shall become a member of your group. The two stepped forward and each went into his preferred fighting stance. Naruto also got into his as well, as it would be 2-on-1. Basically a handicap match. Yuya looked on, a bit of concern on her face. Both Sakin and Kidomaru were tough enough on their own. Facing the both of them at the same time would be extremely difficult. Naruto's eyes drifted to his opponents, the two were exchanging glances but not saying anything, as if mentally they were trying to formulate a strategy to beat him. He would have to be on guard. Sakin and his brother Uken were skilled in taijutsu and Kidomaru was very sneaky. Several tense moments passed as the three looked at one another. Begin, Orochimaru shouted. Sakin was the first to move, charging him and letting out a battle cry. He threw a punch at him which Naruto managed to block. Then a foot came out of his stomach and caught him in the chest, knocking him back. The foot belonged to Uken, who had got him. The twins, sharing the same body, charged him and attacked him. Naruto had to move quick and precisely to avoid the punches and kicks being thrown at him simultaneously by them. Grabbing some shuriken, he threw the ninja stars at them. The twins covered up and got nicked by them. Naruto then went on the offensive before they could recover and landed a blow on Sakin, knocking them back. Sakin pulled out a kunai and slashed at him with it. Naruto caught the arm and prevented it from coming down. But then Uken appeared and stabbed him in the stomach with his own kunai, forcing Naruto to let go and back off. Naruto checked his stomach and saw that Uken had pierced a hole in his shirt, narrowly missing his skin. The twins came at him again, but this time he was ready. Quickly doing hand seals, he summoned the weapon he knew would defeat them. His kusarigama appeared in his hands and he wielded the dual weapon. He threw the metal ball part of it at them, forcing the brothers to stop and dodge it, as the ball would have knocked whoever it hit out. Naruto didn't waste any time in their hesitation and charged them and sliced at them with the razor-sharp kuma. He caught Sakin's shirt, tearing off part of it which could have just as easily been his skin. Uken separated from his brother and charged him from the side, but Naruto saw him coming and twirling the metal ball through it and caught him in the shoulder, disorienting him. Uken, regroup. Sakin ordered and the two joined again. The two brothers looked at one another and nodded. They separated again and circled him, one on each side. Naruto twirled his kusarigama overhead to force them to keep their distance. He kept both of his eyes on them as they were planning something. Sakin then grinned unexpectedly. "Kidomaru now," he shouted, and Naruto's eyes widened when he heard a twanging sound. He quickly moved and saw an arrow fly past him, mere inches away from hitting his back. He had forgotten all about the spider nin who had formed a bow and arrow as his headband was down, revealing his third eye. The twins had kept him busy so he wouldn't be able to focus on the greater danger. Kidomaru fired another arrow and Naruto barely moved out of the way again as it flew past him and stuck into a tree. Naruto, realizing he had to stay mobile, kept moving as he could not fight off Sakin and Ukin and avoid Kidomaru's shots at the same time. He had to think of a way to immobilize one of them. Another arrow whizzed by his head that come dangerously close to Shishka, bobbing him. He had to get rid of Kidomaru's bow and arrow. Making hand symbols, he created 15 clones of himself. Running amongst them, he hoped to confuse them and sneak his way to Kidomaru. Sakin and Ukin fought 5 clones and managed to defeat them easily. They were a bit dazed by the sonic waves they made but soon recovered. Kidomaru fired another arrow and it pierced through 3 clones at a time. He saw another clone charging him. Notching another arrow, he smirked and fired when it got close. It exploded after the arrow made contact with it, but unexpectedly the real Naruto, who in secret was running right behind it, leapt up and before Kidomaru could react sliced his bow to pieces with his kusarigama. He then followed it up with a punch to the spider nin's jaw, knocking him down. "Crap!" Kidomaru shouted and fired some webbing at a nearby tree and got away, hiding amongst them. Naruto went to follow him when he sensed trouble and saw Sakin and Ukin, their bodies covered with markings as they activated their cursed seal. The two attacked and delivered a combined blow to him, knocking him onto the ground. Naruto got up quickly as they came at him again, but they were faster and their attacks were stronger as well. Naruto backed up and went to make hand symbols. Futon. Die. Suddenly, before he could finish, Kidomaru reappeared in front of him and spat out from his mouth webbing, catching him directly in the face. Naruto cried out in shock as it blinded him and he tried desperately to remove it. Suddenly he was grabbed from behind by multiple arms. "Sakin. I got him. End it now," Kidomaru shouted as he was holding him, preventing him from escaping. Naruto, with the little sight he had, saw Sakin charging him, ready to deliver a powerful blow at him which he might not be able to withstand. He struggled to break free, but Kidomaru's 6 arms held him tight. He saw Sakin getting closer and knew he had to do something. In a last-ditch effort to get free, he threw his back at Kidomaru, trying to unbalance him. The plan worked as Kidomaru lost his footing for a split second, and that enabled Naruto to get his legs up and kick the charging Sakin away. But before he could get away, he was covered with sticky webbing as Kidomaru had ensnared him like a fly in a web. Despite his squirming, the web was as strong as iron and it proved useless to struggle. "Hold him still this time," Sakin shouted at Kidomaru as Ukin joined up with him and the two charged as one. But as he neared him, Naruto suddenly broke free of the webbing, surprising all 3 of them. He then elbowed Kidomaru in the stomach, and before Sakin could react, Naruto delivered a powerful punch to his jaw, knocking him to the floor. Sakin pulled himself up and then noticed that Naruto's eyes were no longer blue. They were now a murderous red. Kidomaru pulled himself up and activated his own cursed seal as markings covered his own body. "That's it, bro. Game over. Now I'm mad," he shouted and threw 6 punches at him, but Naruto moved out of the way much to his surprise. Naruto connected with a powerful uppercut to his jaw as slowly claw markings and fangs were showing on his face. Sakin and Ukin charged him and Naruto saw them coming out of the corner of his eye. He evaded the attacks and delivered a powerful roundhouse kick to the side of Ukin's head. "Ukin!" Sakin shouted as his brother was alive but unconscious. But before he could do anything, Naruto got out a kunai and, turning it around, jabbed the blunt end of the weapon right into his throat. Sakin grasped at his neck at the unexpected move as the blow had stunned him and making him cough. Suddenly Naruto then wrapped his arm around his throat, putting him in an effective choke hold. Sakin tried to break free, but the pressure on his throat was too much. "Do you surrender?" Naruto asked as he put on more pressure and could cut off all blood to his brain if he didn't let up. I yield," he shouted, giving up, and Naruto let him go. He grasped at his throat in pain and rubbed it as he coughed. Naruto's features returned to normal and he saw his father approach him. "You have passed the test, Naruto. You are now the newest member of the Sound 4. Orochimaru said to him, "Thank you Otusan, I am honored to be one," he said bowing to him. Orochimaru nodded. "You showed skill in making Sakin give up." A cunning blow to his windpipe and then cutting off his ability to breath was a clever move. Naruto nodded and looked at Sakin and Kidomaru, who although injured would be better in a few hours. Tayuya looked happy to see that he had won as well. For now took the rest of the day off, but remember, as a member of the Sound 4 you have more responsibilities now. I hope you are up to the challenge. All of you should be ready for what may very well soon happen. Orochimaru said to him. Naruto nodded and bowed, and Orochimaru smirked and left them. Although Naruto passed the test to become a member of the Sound 4, he also passed a secret test that his father had given him. And now he was more than ready for whatever was going to come. Chapter 53. In the flourishing village of Wave, which had transformed so much ever since its liberation and the death of the businessman Gato, the mood was pleasant as the island had rebuilt itself as the great Naruto Bridge connected itself to the mainland, allowing easier access to it. Ah, there's nothing like a trip to the hot springs after a hard day's work. Zaku Abumi said as the boy sat down in the water wearing only a towel around his waist. Except you have never done a hard day's work. The bandaged figure seated next to him said as he still covered his head while he bathed. Easy for you to say, I say we've deserved this. Zaku said to Dosu Kinyuta. The two along with their teammate Kintsuchi and another Oto nin were in the village as a couple of days ago they had been hired as extra muscle to guard a rich merchant's caravans that he wanted to be taken to Wave. They had been paid well and the job was easy with no signs of attackers, so they decided, they being Zaku, to take a few days off before they headed back to Oto. They had no idea of all that had happened ever since then. Too bad we can't persuade Kin to come over here and join us on the men's side. I could use the company. Zaku said with a smirk. Dosu rolled his one eye at his teammate and wished he had brought his melody arm with him when the two decided to go to the springs. Orochimaru-sama won't be pleased when he finds out what we're doing. He would have expected us to be back by now. Ah, we'll just tell him that one of us got sick or something and had to stay here for a few days. What he doesn't know won't kill us. Zaku said as he relaxed in the water. Where's Haku at? I haven't seen him since earlier in the day. Did they mistake him for a girl again and send him over to the female side? Dosu shrugged. He's at that hill again, he's been going there every night. Apparently it holds something of value to him as he stays there for hours. Meh, Zaku replied. It's no concern of us what he does, might as well let him stay there if that's all he does. He said as he sank deeper into the water enjoying its warmth. Outside the village overlooking a hill, Haku kneeled before the makeshift grave of his former master. He had come with the Sound Trio to Wave as the place held a special meaning to him. Every night for hours on end he would be here as he looked at the grave of Zabuza Momochi. Perhaps it was to ease the pain of his death or to make sure no one was desecrating it, but he stayed there not moving a muscle. A lone tear fell out of his eye as he remembered his death. You seem to come here often, boy, said a voice, and Haku turned around and saw an old man walking up the hill towards him. The man who is buried underneath here must have been great importance to you. Tazuna said to him as he stopped before him. I see that you are using his weapon now. You know that not long ago my master and I was ordered to kill you. The bridge builder nodded. I remember, but the man who ordered you to is now dead. Haku nodded as well as Gato and his men had been killed by Naruto when he first activated the Kyuubi's power. My friend would be surprised when he finds out you named the bridge after him. Naruto. The old man said, and slowly a smile appeared on his tired face. Yes, we owe him everything. He inspired me, my daughter Tsunami, and my grandson Inari and all the people of Wave to stand up. I hate to think what would be happening now if he hadn't. He then looked past him and at the grave. I buried him, although he may have tried to kill me. No one deserves to have their body left for the crows to pick apart. A few of the villagers and the sensei of the Leaf team helped me as well. For that you have my thanks, Master Bridge Builder. Haku said to him as he bowed. For doing what I would not have been able to. Tazuna nodded at him. A word of advice from this old man who has seen many things. Never forget what has happened in the past, but don't let it consume you and prevent the future you have. He then left Haku on the hillside. Haku went to say something to him but stopped as the elderly man walked out of view. He then looked at Zabuza's grave again. In the caverns of Iwagakure. Kage Sosano walked through the caverns, a pleased look on his face underneath the mask he wore. At his side where Lu Xiang and Da Zhao as a minor underling was giving him details about what was happening. Thanks to the unlimited fire he had given them, the workers and blacksmiths would soon be done making the weapons. Everything was going according to plan. Suddenly he heard a loud roar and looked over at the training area and saw the source of it. A large warrior as big as he was wide, wearing a heavy helmet to cover his face and wielding a large pike, easily defeated all who got in his way. He was tall, well over 6 feet, and weighing over 300 pounds. Most impressive was the fact that his body was solid, hard and chiseled, as there was not an ounce of fat on him. He brutally crushed his adversaries, and when an instructor tried to get him to stop, he grabbed him and lifted him up and began crushing to the life out of him. The instructor tried to break the hold, but he only added more pressure and snapped his neck. He dropped the dead man and let out a beastly roar as his faced Kage. Lu Xiang saw this as a challenge and lifted up his halberd, prepared to answer it, when Kage held one arm out in front of him to keep him back. Underneath the mask he wore, Kage was smiling as he found a perfect specimen. Later he stood on a balcony overlooking a force of 70 men. At his side was the helmeted warrior who he had put in charge of the force, who was called Hua Mok, which fittingly enough translated to in the old language of Iowa, a ruthless beast. Go now. Do not stop or rest until it is destroyed, he commanded, wiping them into a frenzy. You are the warriors of Iwagakure and Jashin. You do not know fear, you do not know pain. You shall slaughter them like cattle, he shouted as they let out a battle cry. He then turned to the helmeted warrior. At wave, destroy the bridge that connects it to the mainland. My ships will then conquer the island and the remnants of the maggots inside, he said in all seriousness as his eyes narrowed. Hua Mok let out a soft primal growl. Kill the fool who built it. Hua then lifted his pike and charged out of the area, followed by the rest of them. Workers and other people of Earth watched as the force ran out of the cavern and outside the gates of Earth on foot, being led by Hua Mok, who was in the front, as they with thunderous speed began their mission. At wave in the morning, Dosu Kinyuta sat on the roof of the inn they were staying at and watched on as he looked at the citizens of the place walking around with hope in their eyes and happiness in their steps. He heard laughter in the distance and he saw a young couple laughing as they walked together. For Dosu, he could only look on in envy at what they were doing. Subconsciously he brought a hand up to his damaged face. How he wished he could shed these bandages once and for all. He watched from above as he saw Zaku and Kin walk out of the inn, and Zaku snaking an arm around her waist. Apparently the two were on a date. Dosu sighed and touched his face again as he looked on. He always preferred to be out of sight, since a person dressed as a mummy would attract a lot of attention no matter where he went. It was something he had accepted. Flashback 5 months ago. Dosu was standing in front of a counter speaking to an older man who stood behind it. The man, who went by the name of Huang, was a surgeon of great skill and ability, although he had a reputation for being arrogant and snooty towards others. So you want me to restore your face to the way it was before your accident, is that right? He said to him as he had his arms crossed. His shop was in Konoha and Dosu had to use his full abilities to not be seen. It wouldn't do him much good if they found out a foreigner from an unknown village was here. That is correct, Dosu said, and he reached into his pocket. This should cover it. He pulled out a couple money bills and laid it on the counter. It was $2,000, all the money he had saved up for this operation to restore his face. The surgeon looked at the money and sniffed, not impressed. I'm afraid that won't cover it. Due to the wounds on your face and to restore your blind eye, it will require a lot of time and energy to heal it. He then produced a folded paper. This is how much it would cost, Huang said to him. Dosu unfolded the paper and his lone eye widened in shock. $30,000, he said in disbelief, and he looked up at the man. You don't really expect me to waste my time on any injury, do you? I don't come cheap, Huang said to him, peering at him behind his glasses. It was true, his skills were used in healing high-ranked ninjas and council men. Dosu looked down at the cost again. $30,000, that would take a lifetime to get. He'd have to become a Jonin in order to hope to get that kind of money. I can't afford this, he said, exasperated. Then leave, Huang said to him coldly. If you can't afford my bill, then get out of here. I have no use to those who think. He was suddenly grabbed by his shirt by Dosu, who brought him down to his face as he stared in his gray eyes. I need this, he said, his voice hinted with venom. Do you know what it's like to be heavily scarred and looked down upon? Unable to walk the streets without everyone's attention being on you as they view you like a freak. he said to him as a ringing noise came from his melody arm. To his credit, Huang didn't show any signs of fear, although he did appear to be more cautious. Well, I can't help you with that, but I suppose I can give you a small discount. 28,000, and that's as low as I'll go. I'm the only one who can heal your scars, so don't even think about harming me. Dosu let go of him and looked down at the cost. $28,000, where the hell am I going to come up with that kind of money? You are a ninja, aren't you? Do whatever it is you ninjas do. The surgeon said as he exited the room and headed back to his office, leaving him outside. Dosu picked up the paper and looked at the cost that he would have to pay. Flashback ends. Dosu held in his hand the same paper from 5 months back that he got, showing the money he needed in order to get that operation from that wretched surgeon. It was the only chance he had. None of the medics or surgeons in sound could do it, except for the possible chance of Kabuto, and he didn't do favors often, so he had to rely on Huang if he ever hoped to shed this outfit. Elsewhere in the land of fire, the scene in a forest was peaceful as a few birds were seated on a branch chirping their song. Suddenly the ground started to rumble and the birds stopped singing and looked around in alarm. Hearing the rumbling getting closer, they flew away. Passing underneath the tree with their footsteps sounding like an earthquake was the armed force being led by Wamok. They had been running for non-stop for hours on end and not a one of them was showing any signs of tiring. They wore helmets and masks to conceal their faces and each of them carried a weapon. The force of 70 men were going at a quick pace, ignoring any pain that they felt in their legs. Not less than a mile away was a group of Anbu from Konoha. The group was walking when suddenly the leader of the group sensed something and turned his head in a direction east. What's wrong? One of the other Anbu asked him, a confused expression underneath his mask. The leader of the group didn't respond as he reached towards his ninjutsu. An unpleasant feeling appeared in his stomach, something dark and ominous. Not far away, Wamok also stared at the area, sensing them nearby. They were of no importance to him, although the ruthless beast did want to wet his pike on fresh blood before they began. He let out a snarl and, mentioning to the others, quickened the pace. Their footsteps sounded like thunder itself as they charged through the woods. Later, at the bridge of Wave, a team of genins led by their sensei had finished their mission escorting a man to Wave. They were from Konoha, 2 boys and a girl. Ha ha. It feels so good to be able to use my youthful spirit. Rock Lee exclaimed as this was his first mission ever since his near-crippling injury at the hands of Gaara months ago. Indeed it is, Lee. Might Guy exclaimed as well, and the two did the nice guy pose. Oh brother, Neji Hyuga muttered under his breath at the scene while his other teammate shook her head as people were now watching. It was Team Guy's first mission back together, the 3 hand-to-hand experts. Tsunade a few weeks ago in a surgery had healed Rock Lee's legs, and the bushy-browed boy was back to his normal energetic youthful self, much to the delight of his sensei. Well, since it appears that our mission is a success, you can have the remainder of the day off before we head back. But I hope you don't decide to be lazy and instead focus on improving your youthful spirits. Guy said to them. Hi sensei. Lee said. I shall run 50 laps around this place, and if I am unable to do that, I shall swim all the way back to Konoha. And at that the green beast of Konoha broke into a jog as his sensei cheered him on. Not to be mean or anything, but there's times when I wish Tsunade hadn't healed him. Ten said as she and Neji watched on. It's time for us to leave. Dosu said to his teammates as the two walked into the room. We have wasted enough time here. Come on dude, lighten up, you don't have to be such a downer. Zaku said to him. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with us having some fun. Kin said as well. Dosu rolled his one eye at them. Orochimaru-sama has been expecting us to be back from here by now. A wise ninja never incurs the wrath of a snake. Zaku and Kin looked at one another and shrugged. Fine, be a killjoy, let us get our stuff together and we'll be ready to leave. Zaku said to him, giving in to him. Hey, where's Haku at? Kin said, looking around as he wasn't in the room. He's at the same spot he's always been at. We'll get him when we are leaving. Dosu said and walked out of the room. He exited the inn and noticed that a thick mist had descended on the town. Unaware to the inhabitants who were used to the mist, a legion of small boats were heading towards the area. In the boats there were 7 men each, and they paddled swiftly to it. A growl came from one of them in the boat as he saw the great bridge, their target that they were ordered to destroy. One of the oarsmen made a loud splash as his oar connected with the water loudly. Quiet. Wamok warned them as they were using the mist to cover their approach. killing some fishermen from the other side. They had taken their boats and was using them. No one knew that they were coming. Faster, he said with a growl, and they picked up the pace. They were starting to reach the shoreline and Wave was oblivious to their approach. Draw weapons, he commanded as they reached the shoreline, and the force drawed out their weapons. They were prepared to attack and raid the place. When to the surprise of all, a bushy-browed green jumpsuit-wearing boy appeared jogging out of the mist. The bull-headed boy didn't see them. "Come on, Lee. Just 15 more laps to go," he said, and then out of the corner of his eye he saw them. He stopped and turned his head. "Hello," he said in a friendly manner, oblivious to the fact they had weapons drawn and were staring incredulously at him. "My name is Rock Lee from Konoha. I train under Might Guy. I don't think we've met. Why are you using those small boats to get here instead of the bridge? Is this part of your training?" he said as he went into the nice guy pose. "Kill him," Wamok ordered, and one drew back his bow and fired an arrow at him. Fortunately for Lee, luck was on his side as the mist impaired the archer's vision as well, and he missed him, the arrow whizzing past his head. A confused look appeared on his face as his brain slowly registered that they might not be too friendly. Wamok raised his pike up and let out a battle cry as the others followed his example, and they then ran up the shore side. A spear wielder charged towards Lee, and the taijutsu user moved out of the way of his thrusts and kicked him in the stomach and then punched him in the head, knocking him out. Seeing more charging towards him and some with arrows, Lee quickly ran away as he would be overwhelmed by them trying to find and alert his sensei and the rest. "Destroy Wave," Wamok bellowed as they charged upwards, nearing the town. "Destroy Wave," he shouted again as he thrusted his pike into the air. Haku was heading back after visiting Zabuza's grave when he noticed carrion crows in the air. They appeared to be gathering as if expecting a battle. This caught his attention and he heard the cries of many. He picked up the pace and ran, and when he got to a hill he looked down with shock at what he saw. Wave was being attacked by unknown assailants. How many of them were there? 50, 60, 70. He could only guess. He watched on as he saw a fisherman killed. Gritting his teeth, he reached to his back and unstrapped his sword. "Zabuza-sama, watch over me," he shouted, charging down the hill and into the fray. "Get the women and children out. Get them all out," Tazuna shouted, trying to make sure to keep order. His daughter and grandson was behind him, a look of fear on their eyes. He said in a panicked voice as he had lost sight of his grandson. Suddenly charging out of the mist came one of those attackers wielding great axe. He hoisted his axe overhead, prepared to chop him in half. Tazuna could only watch on in hopeless shock as he was about to be cleaved in half. Suddenly a figure appeared in front of him and struck down the attacker, killing him with his weapon. The figure turned and revealed himself. "Get out of here. Run if you want to live," Haku shouted at him, and Tazuna nodded and led Tsunami and Inari away, leading them to safety. Haku brought his blade up and rushed into the center of all the chaos. The men of Wave attempted to fight off the invading forces, but they weren't well trained and were being pushed back by them. Some houses had been set on fire. At the bridge some of them were using jutsus to tear the bridge down. But Wave was not alone in this fight. The Sound Trio were also fighting as well, and being better trained managed to hold their own. Zaku fired a burst of wind at some enemies, knocking them back, and Kin followed it up by throwing her Senbon and activating her Genjutsu. Dosu dodged the attacks of his foe and threw a punch, activating his Melody arm. A person appeared behind Dosu, prepared to strike him down when something hit him in the back. He dropped his sword and fell to the ground dead. Dosu turned around and saw several kunai sticking out of him, and he saw who threw them. Ten stood on top of a roof using her accurate aiming skills to pick them off. A long-haired boy also used his fighting style to fend them off. What are you Leaf Nins doing here?" Zaku said in disbelief. Neji turned to face them. "I could ask you the same thing, no doubt making trouble," he said with a frown. "I don't have any problems kicking your ass here and now, pretty boy." Zaku snapped at him as he didn't like his accusing tone. "Cut it out, all of you." A green blur appeared, revealing itself to be Rock Lee. "We have a common enemy, can't we put that aside and work together?" he said to them as the fight raged on. The two teams looked at one another, dislike on each of their faces. "Just don't get in our way and be hindrances," Neji said. "Stay out of our way and we'll stay out of your way." Dosu countered as an uneasy truce went. The invaders attacked fiercely as they destroyed shops and buildings, pillaging the place. They were met by the men of Wave who fought them as battle raged all over the area. Although they had the number advantage, Wave lacked the skills and training that they had, so it evened it out. Haku made his way to the bridge and saw them attempting to destroy it. Grasping his Zanbato, he charged forward and cut them down where they stood. He glanced around and saw that they had destroyed the edges of it. He heard a roar all of a sudden and saw 3 men of Wave fly out of the mist and onto the ground out cold. Haku then saw a large heavy man walk out of the mist wearing a helmet and wielding a pike that had blood on it. Haku looked on in awe as the man twirled his pike with one hand. He looked down at him as he was 3 times as big as he was and maybe 5 times as wide. Haku showed no fear as he brought his weapon up. Wamok roared and charged him. His pike slammed against his own and it nearly sent it flying out of his hands. Haku felt his entire body shaking as that was a powerful blow. He ducked under his next attack as the man came on like a wild animal. Another swing and another close call. Haku produced Senbon and threw them at him, but they had little effect on the brute. Haku went low and avoiding his attack shoulder tackled him in the side. He might as well had tried to knock down a pair of trees as his shoulders nearly went numb from the impact. He avoided another wild swing as the berserker was intent on killing him. Haku couldn't match him in speed and he could only hope to stay one move ahead of him and look for openings. Wamok came at him again and he wondered if he would find an opening before he could kill. In the village the battle still waged on. Guy fought off a group of invaders who were assaulting some women and children. Cowards! You dare attack defenseless people and disturb the peace. He shouted as they circled around him. You are dishonorable bastards who have shamed your spirits and your lives. He said as he looked at them all. A green aura, his youthful spirit, also started to form around him, shocking them. He then went into a fighting stance. Come on then. I might Guy the green beast of Konoha shall defeat you all. He shouted as the aura formed around him increased. They charged him all at once and in the blink of an eye he was gone. Before they could look he reappeared and delivered a series of powerful punches and kicks at them. The taijutsu master and Kakashi's rival delivered jabs and uppercuts, thrust kicks and roundhouses. Letting out battle cries he single-handedly defeated them all with none of them even landing a blow on him. He looked around and saw that they were all down. Well, I guess that's that, he said and raised his hand into a backhand and hitting an enemy in the face from behind who had snuck up on him. He turned around and saw him go down. Oh, I'm sorry I didn't see you there. You shouldn't sneak up on me like that, he said, apologizing to him, and went to find his students. The battle went for several long minutes which felt like hours to those involved. The invaders weren't a band of ruffians and bandits, they were a well-trained force that knew how to work together and did not fear death. One wielding a ball and chain threw it and hit a man in the chest, knocking him to the ground. Zaku Abumi having to team up with Rock Lee who had opened the gates, increasing his speed and strength. Zaku dodged an arrow shot at his head and fired a burst of wind at him from his air cutters. Rock avoided the wild swings of his enemy as he was too agile for him. The men went up high with his sword and Lee ducked and went down low and kicked him hard in the jaw, sending him upwards into the air. Lee reappeared right behind him and wrapping bandages around him turned the both of them upside down and began spinning as they dropped to the ground, the impact making crater in the ground. He got up but was weakened as that move also had a side effect of taking a lot out of him. A swordsman saw this and went to kill him as Lee wasn't able to recover in time. As he neared Lee he was suddenly blown away by Zaku who had blasted him unexpectedly, saving the Leaf Nin. The two looked at one another and Zaku nodded at him as he turned his attention back to the fight. The battle between Haku and Wamok was still going on with Haku at a disadvantage. He ducked and rolled under another swing of the helmeted warrior but he could not find an opening. He had scored some minor hits with his Senbon but all that did was seem to drive him on even further. He swung his Zanbato at him but he parried with his pike and overpowered him and knocked him off his feet. Haku barely managed to move out of the way as he punched the bridge, putting cracks in it. Haku got up and brought his weapon out before him. He had noticed a pattern of his attacks and that he seemed to be tiring a little bit, but the behemoth didn't show any serious signs of being fatigued. His speed had prevented him from using that pike to turn him into mush for now. Haku also realized that head on, he stood no choice against him. He went and sheathed his blade. Wamok charged him and thrusted his pike right at him. But to his surprise he disappeared and instead 21 mirrors of solid ice appeared, trapping him. Haku, having activated his bloodline, had went back with one of his old favorites. Appearing in a mirror, he threw Senbon at him and then quickly appearing in another mirror and doing the same thing. Wamok was unable to move quickly as Haku moved from mirror to mirror in the blink of an eye and threw them at him. Although they were minor hits, they quickly were starting to add up, and Haku threw kunai and shurikens made of ice as well at him. Although his armor he wore deflected most of it, Wamok was a sitting duck as he was too slow to move out of the way, as it appeared that Haku was appearing in all 21 mirrors at once. Nicks and cuts were appearing on his skin and blood was showing as Haku now had the advantage. Wamok clutched his pike and then fell down to one knee after several minutes and being hit hundreds of times. Haku dispelled the jutsu and stood before him. He heard the sounds of battle coming from the town and started to head back there to help them out. He was unaware of Wamok looking at him and getting to his feet. Filled with renewed rage, he clutched his pike and letting out a powerful roar charged him, planning on skewering him in the back from behind. Haku turned around and at the last split second drew out his blade and did a lightning quick slash at him as he came at him. Wamok charged past him and stopped a few feet behind him, the two back to back. Time slowed to slow down as neither moved. Suddenly, Wamok let out a gurgled cry as blood escaped from his helmet and dropping his pike fell down with a loud thud on the ground as Haku had sliced his ribcage while he had missed. Haku turned around and sheathing his weapon started to head back to the town to help them out. "Wow, I didn't think he'd be beaten that easily," said a voice, and he turned around and saw a woman appear out of a blinding light. She looked down at the body with disdain. "I thought he was supposed to be some super strong warrior, not easily trashed by some kid." "Who are you?" Haku said to her as he couldn't see her clearly as a pink light covered her. He then saw the body of Wamok float up into the air surrounded by a glow. "What are you doing with him?" Dajao smirked at him. "I'm taking him with me. I'd take you as well, but you're a little bit young for my tastes. Don't worry, you'll see him again after I make sure he is a true warrior. And you'll see me again as well, little boy. I hope you've grown some when we do, bye-bye," she said with a wave and disappeared in a flash of sparks, leaving behind an echo of laughter. "What the? Who in the world was that?" Haku asked, not sure what had just happened. Whoever it was, he had the feeling it wasn't the last time he saw her. The men of Wave let out a cheer as the invaders fled, having been defeated and with their leader dead. Haku met up with the Sound Trio and saw to his surprise the Leaf Ninja, especially Neji, who didn't say anything to him. "We thank you for your aid this day," Tazuna said to them all later. "Your actions may have saved our homes." Haku nodded and looked around at the damage done. "But part of the bridge has been destroyed and some of your homes have been burnt down. We didn't do enough. Yes, homes have been destroyed and some lives have been lost, but we can rebuild. You can always rebuild if you have enough hope. Just like we did after Gato was killed," Tazuna said with a smile. Haku nodded at him. "We would like to stay and help out, but we have to report to our lord and the rest in Sound what had just happened here. These weren't your average ruffians. I fear danger might be close to our home." "I understand," he said and turned to both teams. "If any of you shall ever find yourselves near here, always remember that you will be welcomed in Wave as our friends." A cheer went up from the citizens of Wave. "Oh, the power of youth," Guy exclaimed, anime tears going down his eyes as well as Lee's, the two hugging one another. Haku bowed to Tazuna and mentioning to the others started to make the way back home. Unknown to all, at the other side where the bridge began, a figure walked up to it and read the sign. "The Great Naruto Bridge." He read it to himself and then lifted his hand and fired a beam of energy at it from one of his rings, destroying the sign. "So it appears even when you are not around you hinder me, fox." Kage Sosano snarled as he had saw the failure to destroy the bridge. The unexpected resistance and defeat that his men had suffered. He glared out at Wave and could hear the faint sounds of cheering, and he grinned evilly. "Enjoy your victory for the moment, for this has been but a taste of what I have in store." Chapter 54. At the gate of Iwagakure. "Hail Jashin, Lord and Master of the world," said a commanding voice as a large force approached the gates of Iwagakure. They were over 300 of them, each of them armed with weapons and armor as they marched upon the gate. The sound of a horn was then heard as one of them blew on it. At the top of the gate, Sima-zun the strategist looked at the approaching force. The man who led the group saluted him as they neared it, opened the gate. He called out and a group of men turning a lever opened the heavy metal gate that led into the capital. The force marched through it as they entered the land. Patrolling the gate, Sima-zun watched on as they entered. "More are coming with each hour, Sima-sama from the surrounding lands." A man said to him. Yes, these men are from the surrounding villages in Earth. It appears they have answered Kage's call and have sworn servitude to him. He said as this was the 5th one today that came, and if the reports were true, more were coming. Jashan appears to have grasped their souls. Said Zhang Mao walking towards them. They now accept his blessing that he will give them. Sima Zun looked at him, a frown on his face as they watched as they made their way to the capital. Despite the failed attempt to destroy the bridge at Wave, the forces were increasing as all around the round were gathering here to the capital of Earth. In the throne room, we will fight for you. The leader of the force that had arrived, a gruff and rough-looking man with a wild beard and hair that had arrived, said to Kage Sosano, who was seated on his throne. Swear it, he ordered as he demanded total loyalty. The man pulled out a dagger and removed the gauntlet from his hand. He then placed it against his hand as Kage looked on, smiling underneath his mask as the man sliced at his hand, bloodying it. He then pressed his bloodied hand against his face, smearing it. We will die, for the name of Jashan, he said as his face was covered with blood. Later Kage stood on top of a balcony at his temple as he stared down at the mass of life below. At that had answered his call from the lands. It is impressive, but numbers don't win wars. Lu Xiang said, looking on as well as the two looked on. They have answered my call. These people are angry, bitter over their lot in life, and they seek to regain the power they once had. Kage responded. The power of Jashan is raising, and soon all the world shall know that the world they know no longer exists. He then turned his eyes to the east, which would lead to sound, and then looked north where Konoha would be at. I shall destroy all who oppose me. At ZODIVK. Tell me what happened. Naruto Uzumaki said to the boy in front of him. Naruto had on around his waist the bow that the rest of the Sound Five weared, symbolizing himself as a member of them. The two were in a room talking to one another. Haku took a deep breath and began to tell Naruto all that had happened. How he and the Sound Trio were at Wave completing their mission when an unexpected attack nearly destroyed Wave. Fortunately, with the unexpected help of the Leaf Nins, they were able to drive them off, but not before some mysterious woman appeared and took the defeated leader alive, saying that this isn't the last time they will see them. This just so happened the same time that Jirobo was killed by an attacking force as well, and Naruto had to take his spot. The events happening at the same time. For the boys it was too much to be a coincidence. Me and the others managed to stop them and save Tazuna and Inari. Haku said to him. That's good, said Naruto as he was glad the old man and his father wasn't hurt. This is way too much to be a coincidence if you ask me. A force attacks the south gate and at the same time attacks Wave as well. I think the two are connected. I think so as well, plus I have a feeling that something's going to happen, but I don't know what. I fear danger might be getting close to our home. Haku said, shaking his head. Naruto had also that same feeling and he didn't like it. We need to talk to Otusan about this is serious. Haku nodded and the two left. At Orochimaru's office. Orochimaru-sama, we believe the two attacks are linked. Haku said to him as he finished telling him what he told Naruto. Kabuto stood by his side as they listened. These weren't attacks by bandits, they were a cohesive force and breed for the purpose of destruction. Haku's right, we fear that this is serious. The same time that Jirobo is killed, Wave is attacked. It's too much to be a coincidence. We don't know who is behind this all. Orochimaru looked on with interest at the boy's tale. It is interesting, but like you said, we don't know who is behind this. I don't think it's the Leaf. Konoha may have its faults, but they wouldn't attack Wave. Naruto said. And some Leaf Nins there managed to help Haku and the others out. We have heard rumors that a village in Fire Country was destroyed as well. Said Kabuto. The ones who did that may have also attacked the South Gate and Wave. Yes, and I'm sure you too have sensed it, that there is a restlessness in the air. Orochimaru said to them. As if something is happening in the very air we breathe. But we cannot do anything just yet as we do not know who is behind all this. However, Naruto. He said to his son. I have a mission for you and the Sound Five to do. The door to his chambers opened suddenly and in stepped the rest, who were surprised to see them. Orochimaru then stood up as he looked at them all. There are reports going on in Earth. Large groups of men have been seen marching and we do not know the purpose of their march. They appear to be gathering. Some say a new ruler has taken over it. I want you, Sakin, Kidomaru, Kimimaro, and Tayuya to cross and sneak into the borders to Earth and see what is going on there. Naruto looked at him and then at the others. He nodded and went to join them. This is an important mission for you all. find what is going on in Earth and return back to me." Haku looked on as the 5 nodded and bowed to him and turned to leave. "Naruto." Orochimaru called out to him and he turned to stop. "Be careful and don't do anything recklessly." Naruto nodded at his father and the Sound 5 left the room beginning their mission. At Konoha, Might Guy had finished reporting to the Hokage about what had happened in Wave when he had left. Earlier when he appeared when Sakura was with her and told it was important, which to him could be either someone died or his eyebrows grew an inch. She decided to give her pupil a break and gave her the rest of the day off. Guy had told her what had happened in Wave in his dramatic way. He told her that during their stay the island was attacked by unknown forces intent on destroying the place. Fortunately he and his team along with some unexpected help managed to drive them off, saving Wave. Tsunade thought over this. First the attack on Shibata which had been destroyed, then rumors that the South Gate in Oto had been attacked and the one in charge there killed, and now Wave had also been attacked. It had been quite a tragic week as people had lost their homes and their lives. But it appeared as if the attacks were connected in some way, but she didn't have any idea of what it meant. Her spies had also told her that something was going on in Iowa, but no one had managed to slip in and find out what exactly. Whatever it was, they wanted it to be kept secret as any attempts to penetrate it had failed. Her thoughts to herself, the Hokage after many years and experience had a feeling that something big was happening. But whatever it was, she had no clue. The next day in the outskirts of Earth. The Sound 5 had made camp in the outskirts of the land of Earth. They were in its territory but still close to home. They had been traveling in secret, not taking the road and instead on the higher mountain path. Earth was rocky and mountainous, a stark contrast to the plains of Oto and Konoha, as a slip on one of those could send you rolling all the way down the stones to a bruising landing. They had seen a town earlier in the day but were stopped by Naruto telling them that if they went there they would draw attention to themselves as they needed to not be seen. Right now they were stopping and preparing to eat lunch. The area they were at was a forest with a stream nearby and one of the few fertile lands that Earth had. Kidomaru, who was the best cooker of the team, was fixing some stew over a pot hanging over a campfire. "So far we have find out nothing," Sakin said leaning against a tree as he looked around. "We only been here a day, Sakin," Kimimaro Kagaya said to him. "We cannot expect to find anything just by looking around in one spot." Sakin and his twin rolled their eyes as Kidomaru tasted the stew he was making and added a bit of seasoning. Naruto Uzumaki sat on a giant rock while Tayuya sat on the other side of it. He looked up at the sky and saw that the sun was out peering through the trees. He glanced around and saw that nothing appeared to be out of the ordinary here, but this was his and the others except for Kidomaru, who lived part of his life in rock, first time here. He then heard a cawing sound getting him out of his thoughts. He looked around and saw a raven perched on a nearby branch of a tree cawing at him. The bird was black as night with a bit of white on its chest and its black eyes seemed to glare at him. He didn't know what its problem was as it cawed loudly and seemingly angrily at him. "Arg, stupid bird," shouted Tayuya, getting annoyed, and she grabbed a rock. "Get the hell out of here," she said, throwing it at it, and she narrowly missed. The raven flapped its wings cawing in protest. "Go on, leave, damn it," she shouted, and she threw more rocks and the raven flew off. Tayuya went to throw another one at the fleeing bird when Naruto grabbed her arm and stopped her. "That's enough, Tayuya, it's gone," he said, getting her to calm down. "Come on guys, let's eat," Kidomaru said as he poured 6 bowls of beef stew as he was done. The group ate their food quietly, not talking much as they chowed down as they ate the stew. Naruto then thought he heard something and he dropped his spoon and glanced around. "What's wrong?" Tayuya asked him as he turned his head. The others also noticed this as well. "I think I hear something," he said and got up, putting down his bowl. He then started to walk off. "Hey, wait up," Sakin said in protest as they followed him. Naruto, not making a sound, followed the source and soon heard what sounded like the sound of marching feet, and many of them it sounded like. Getting on his belly, he crawled to the edge of a hill hiding between bushes and gasped at what he saw. "Naruto." He turned his head and saw the others, and he put his finger to his lips and mentioned for them to be quiet. They joined him and saw what he saw. Men, many men were marching through the plains. Numbering at least 400 they marched. Their faces were covered with black cloths and they wore red and gray outfits covering themselves, revealing only their eyes. Some of them appeared to be female as well. Each one had a weapon and a bow as they marched. "What are they doing?" Sakin asked as they spied on the force, who was thankfully unaware they were there. I guess Orochimaru-sama was right, they are marching, but for what? Kidomaru muttered. War, Kimimaro answered bluntly, and they looked at the last Kage. They are marching for war. My clan also did this as well. They by the looks of it are preparing for battle. To attack a rival village. Yuya asked bluntly. No, said Naruto. They are planning something, I can sense it. I bet ya that it was Earth who was behind those attacks recently. He said as they looked on and saw that some of them were leading tigers and wolves that were attached to chains, and the animals growled fiercely. The large force of 400 from one of the tribes that Earth had marched as the sun reflected off their weapons and armor, unaware that they were being spied on as they marched to the capital, prepared to join up with all the other forces that were gathering. We gotta report this to Otusan, Earth is preparing for war against someone. Naruto said, getting ready to leave, when a loud cawing sound spooked them and they saw the same raven they had seen earlier fly overhead. The raven flew towards the force and landed on the shoulder of a man who had a gold nose ring and cawed to him. The man, who was apparently the leader, understood what it said and turned his gaze to the hill, to their hiding place, and made them out. His eyes widened and then narrowed angrily as he snarled, revealing his teeth. Oh no, Kidomaru said out loud as they had been spotted. The man let out a bellow and the force turned their attention and saw them as one. They yelled and began charging towards them up the hill. Run! Shouted Naruto to them all as they got up and quickly began running as arrows whizzed past them. The sound 5 were on the ran as they heard the cries of their attackers and the roars of the tigers and wolves that had been released as they gave pursuit. Several of them threw their spears but missed as they yelled angrily in pursuit. Keep moving. Don't slow down for a damn thing. Yuya shouted as they ran as fast as their feet would carry them. The large force was pursuing them, letting out war cries as they chased after them. Naruto looked around and didn't see any way for them to go. An arrow whizzed by his head as they fired at them all. They would be on them soon if something didn't happen. He stopped and turned around and performed hand symbols. Futon. Datapa. He shouted and sent a powerful burst of wind at them, knocking them off their feet. That would be them some time. Keep running. Sakin shouted as they moved, as that had managed for them to get some distance. But it only appeared to delay the inevitable, as they were soon chasing after them. They were starting to surround them on all sides, as some were running on the plains below in an attempt to cut them off. If they cut us off, we're dead. Kimimaro said with a curse. His eyes then spotted something. A cave, he shouted, seeing it nearby. Into the cave. The sound 5 saw it and pressed forward, charging towards it. They managed to make it inside and ran as fast as their feet could carry them. After they had went in, they started to notice they weren't pursuing them. A rumbling sound was heard and their eyes widened at that. They were trying to seal them inside. They ran back towards the entrance, but it was too late, as the entrance became flooded with rocks and boulders, as they had caused a landslide from the outside, trapping them in. No. God damn it, shouted Yuya in shock as they were sealed off. She breathed hard and looked around the dark area as she could barely make out the others. Great. Just great, now we're trapped here forever. She said, exasperated. Calm down, Red. Sakin said to her. Don't tell me to calm the hell down. She shouted angrily at him, and arguing started to erupt between them all at what had happened. Quiet, shouted a voice, and they saw Naruto approach from the back of it. This is no time to panic, any of us. We gotta find a way out of here. I saw something back here and there appears to be a road. I think there is another exit. Now, instead of putting the blame guy on one another, how about we try to figure out if we can get out of here? He said as he was taking command. The group looked around at one another, as unless they wanted to suffocate they had to follow the path. The Sound 5 then started to walk in a single file, with Naruto in the lead, carrying a torch that he had found with a branch from his pack, and in the rear was Kimimaro, who also carried a torch. That way they could at least see some one another as they went through the path. All of you be careful, we don't know what's in here, this could be a bear's cave for all we know. Kimimaro said to them. Minutes seemed to last as long as hours, as they found themselves being fooled by their shadows at times. The cave, it seemed to go on for miles, and it wasn't a bear's cave, as it was too long for it. Also, as they went on, parts of it seemed smoother and less rocky, as if someone had constructed it. They found a pathway and saw to their surprise when they exited bridges and machines set up. They seemed to have been set up here a long time ago. Also, there was carved steps and old ropes and ladders. This isn't a cave, it's a mine. Kimimaro said, his voice a whisper as they looked around. Let's hope the miners here are friendly. Kidamaru said dryly. This mine has been abandoned. Naruto replied, and they looked at him. This place has been abandoned for dozens of years, careful, the bridges and steps might not hold us. He said, and they continued. Some of the steps were crumbling and they had to step carefully, and as they crossed a wooden bridge they had to hope it would remain strong as they passed one at a time. As they walked through one narrow pathway, Naruto suddenly stopped and he mentioned for them to look. Otusan once told me that the wealth of Earth wasn't in its fields, nor its ninjas, but its iron and ore from their vast mines. Look at these veins, they seem to go on for miles. I bet the people who used to live here never reached the bottom of that hole down there. If they didn't hit bottom, then how come we haven't seen anyone? Sakin asked snidely. A decline, Kimimaro responded. The first rock cage was said to be one of the most powerful men ever. After his death, Earth went on a decline. No wonder they abandoned this place. Wherever in the underworld we are. Naruto held out his torch as they looked down at the site. They could almost imagine what this place must have looked like in its prime. Hundreds of miners working frantically in a frenzy to extract the tools needed to create amazing weapons and armor. Okay, that's enough sightseeing, let's go. Tayuya said, and the group continued. Hours seemed to pass through as none of them spoke a word, and soon enough they found themselves overwhelmed with exhaustion, and with one on guard for 2 hours slept as easily as they could, their thoughts wondering if they would ever see the outside world again. After waking up and eating a meager breakfast from the supplies they had left as they had to ration it, they continued walking. A hope spot come to them in the form of a pathway. Let's take a break before we go next. Naruto said to them, and they agreed to it. We're lost, aren't we? Sakin muttered as he, Kidamaru and Kimimaro sat around a small fire. I don't think we're lost. Naruto seems to know what he's doing. Kidamaru said. That's because he's been walking around blindly telling us to cling to hope so we can get out of here. Anyone can do that. Sakin said dryly as he drank a sip from his canteen and put the cap on it. Quiet, ordered Kimimaro, telling the two to shut up. Tayuya ignored them and walked up the small stairs to where Naruto was it. The boy was seated, down, his head in his hands. Hey, she said and nudged him. Are you alright? Naruto looked up at her. Yeah, I guess, he said, although he didn't look it. You don't look alright, she replied dryly. I guess since this is my first serious role as a leader I have a lot of pressure. I don't know if I'm cut out to lead. He said. We would have died or killed each other yesterday if you hadn't told us to shut the hell up. You took command back there and managed to get us to cooperate. Tayuya said, reminding him. A leader isn't a person who is given the title. He is a person who manages to take charge and earn it and gets the trust of his companions. Don't listen to what those assholes say. If it wasn't for you, who knows where we would be at. Tayuya said to him as she sat down. I guess since I'm going to be the heir to sound by Otusan, I have a lot of pressure on me. Naruto said. Nobody is expecting you to do miracles in 5 minutes, just do what you think is best. Naruto looked at her and slowly a smile formed on his face. Thanks Tayuya, I needed that. And to her surprise he hugged her. She blushed in surprise but slowly returned the hug. Naruto then stood up. Come on guys, let's get out of this mine. The group went through the pathway and soon found themselves going down some stairs. As they went down they slowly looked up at what they saw as they were in a large room that you could fit thousands of people in. Naruto smiled as he had heard the tales of what they saw. All around them were pillars hundreds of feet tall and iron gates and houses seemingly carved into the stone itself. This place wasn't just a mine, it was also a city at one time. The jewel of the land of Earth itself. Shuchuang, the city beneath the living earth. Naruto said with a smile as Orochimaru had told him the tale of the once fabled city that was home to the first rock cage. He had a feeling that this was the place when they discovered it wasn't an ordinary cave. The designs around them were spectacular as they showed chiseled statues and tapestries detailing the foundation of Earth and the rays of the first rock cage. An amazed look was on all their faces as the buildings were both grand and spectacular. Even the stoic Kimimaro was taken by surprise by all that he saw as Shuchuang, the city that was underground, was the height of Earth's power and magnificence. It was almost sad to see that it was now empty, a shadow of its former great glory. As they looked around the sights they came to 2 pathways when Naruto suddenly ducked behind a pillar and the rest quickly followed. Naruto peered out behind it and saw 2 armed men who were apparently patrolling the area. Nothing as usual, there's no point in patrolling these tunnels. One of them said. Yeah, muttered the other one. But orders are orders, hopefully when the fighting starts we get some action. Naruto's eyes perked up at that. Yeah, finally our new master shall lead us to glory and we will be restored to our rightful place as the most dominant land. This war he is planning shall give us some good fun. I've been bored patrolling these lousy tunnels. That way leads to the tomb and the outside world, and this one leads to the caverns where our weapons are being made. The two walked off going through the right pathway and Naruto looked at the others. Earth is preparing for war, we got to get out of here and warn Otusan. He said to them. Yeah, quick let's head to that tomb and get the hell out of here. Yuya responded. The group quickly and carefully went through the left pathway and soon came to a room filled with a tomb. It was a grand tomb filled with ornaments decorating the walls and the coffin was 10 feet long and half as wide. On it were kanji and a sword that laid across it apparently the weapon of the man who was in it. Here lies Kojiro son of Nobunaga, first rock cage of earth. Said Kimimaro who read the inscriptions as they were in the tomb of the first rock cage himself. The last Kage bowed his head paying his respects to him and glared at Kidomaru who reached towards the sword. Do not disturb the dead's eternal rest. He warned the spider ninja who wisely backed away from it. I heard tales that he was supposedly a match for the first Hokage of Konoha as well, but it appeared there was a foe he couldn't defeat. Said Sakin as they looked at the grand room that was his. After exiting the room they began to notice that the air started to smell and feel more clearer than it had been before. Their hopes were now renewed and found themselves quickening their pace as they continued walking. I see a light. Kidomaru exclaimed as faintly there was something far away. They hurried their pace and it started to get closer. They then saw the exit and found themselves outside as the sun shone down upon them. We made it, Naruto said with satisfaction as they had survived. And we aren't far off from civilization. Kimimaro said and he pointed and they saw in a distance Konoha as the way through the mountains was a path taken by those of earth and fire countries as a shortcut. Apparently though it had been forgotten. Come on we don't want to waste any time with the leaf, let's head home. Yuya said and they went down the hill. But when they reached the bottom of the hill a voice cried out and they suddenly found themselves surrounded by a group of 20 Anbu appearing out of nowhere. They had surprised them and caught them off guard. You are under arrest for trespassing near Konoha Sound Nins. The leader of the group said to them. We are just passing through. We don't want any trouble. Naruto protested as he saw them with blowguns and poison darts readied. The leader stared at him hard behind his mask. We aren't willing to believe the people who tried to destroy our homes and families. Especially traitors. Execute. Hold. Shouted a voice and a white-haired man wearing red appeared. These are prisoners and they are not to be harmed unless the Hokage says so. Jiraiya said appearing out of nowhere. Jiraiya-sama, these are the same people who killed many of our comrades and friends. The leader said to him. Jiraiya looked past him and at Naruto. Nevertheless, they cannot be executed unless Tsunade calls for it. We have important information, if you don't let us go both Sound and Konoha will be, Naruto started to say when someone poked him in the back with a kunai. Bind their hands. Jiraiya said. Let Tsunade decide what to do with it. He said in an ordering tone. Their hands were binded much to their annoyance as they were prisoners. Jiraiya then walked up to Naruto. It's for the best kid, just be patient and then tell Tsunade what you have to say. He whispered into his ear. Naruto watched him walk out in front as they were forced to march to Konoha. Chapter 55. So, have the idiotic bastards forgotten about us already or what? Yuya muttered as she and the rest of the Sound Five were being held in separate prison cells. 3 hours had passed ever since they had been captured after their exhausting escape from Earth and traveling underground only to be caught off guard and surrounded by Anbu when they emerged from the cave. They could have tried to fight them off but they were outnumbered and weary from their travel. Their hands had been binded and were taken into Konoha by a secret passage and had been placed in a top-notch prison. Using a sealing jutsu, they had cut off their flow of chakra to make sure they didn't try anything. Naruto had tried to tell them what they saw was going on in Iwa but none of them listened to him although Jiraiya the white-haired man he recognized back when he got healed had told him to be patient and that he'll see Tsunade. Yet nothing had happened as it seemed they had been left in here to rot. Naruto peered out beyond the bars as the room was poorly lit. They had to listen to him. They did not know what was happening in Earth. He also had to tell his father what they had seen as well, but he would accomplish nothing stuck in this lousy cell. He looked over at the others in their cells. Tayuya was ticked off as usual while the others kept to themselves. This was going nowhere, and the more time he was stuck here the more all of them remained oblivious to the threat. In Tsunade's office, Tsunade sat at her desk looking at the red-wearing lecher in front of her. He had appeared quite rudely earlier just when she was getting ready to take a bath. Fortunately for him, she was dressed properly, or else she would have removed all his ribs. Claiming that he had important information for her, she had to postpone her bath and listen to him. Why should I care about some sound nins that were near our borders? The last thing I want on my mind today is dealing with the affairs of Odo. Just release them and get them the hell out of here, she said, crossing her arms, not interested. Aside from herself and the Toad Sanin, only a few of the councilmen who had a better network of spies like Danzo knew about the prisoners. No one else in Konoha knew about them. Jiraiya frowned at her. Look, it's not just some ordinary ninjas, one of them happens to be the kid of Orochimaru, he said, trying to get her to pay attention. Tsunade's eyes widened a bit after that. Orochimaru's son, what was he doing here so close to Konoha with the relationship between Odo and Leaf so bad? Why would Orochimaru send his own kid here? What is he doing here? How did he get here? Jiraiya shook his head. From what we know, he and the rest of them came down from the pathway that used to connect fire and earth. How he got there I don't know. Tsunade frowned at that. That pathway has mostly been forgotten by all. Back in the days of my grandfather it was to connect both Konoha and the former capital of Earth, Shuchuang. The only other people that would know about in this day would be Orochimaru and some of the old elders in Earth. It used to be quite a traveling area, but now it has been largely forgotten. How did they find that place? Could Orochimaru have found a secret entrance in sound? He may have done that. And if that's true, if he feels the need to attack us again, he has an easy pathway. But I don't think so. Here, look at this map, she said and showed it to him. Except for the valley at the end, most of sound is flatlands, so it's highly unlikely he found a secret entrance in sound. Jiraiya nodded. The kid did say they was in Iwa and had to take a secret path through a cave to escape a force. He says he has something to tell you, but right now he's locked up. And if his daddy finds out we got his kid locked up, he will not be too happy. Tsunade said dryly, as she had remembered his warning at what would happen if they tried to do anything to his son. Well, what are we going to do then? We can't just keep him locked up, nor can we just release them. We should find out what they were doing and how they came out of that cave. I'll ask them myself about what they were doing and get them the hell out of here after I'm done. Jiraiya looked at her and then outside the window and towards the north, which led to the mountainous region of Earth. He crossed his arms as he looked on, as he could sense that something was going on there. At Iwagakure. Has it been done, Kage? Sosano asked Shimazune as he sat on his throne. The man was reading a letter that had been delivered to him by a hawk messenger. It has been done, my lord. My men have intercepted the merchant wagon heading towards Konoha and have taken control of it. They should soon arrive there and deliver the items. But what Konoha doesn't know is that it won't be the items they believe it to be. Good, Kage said as he was flanked by Zhongmao and Dajao as usual. The forces of Earth were gathering inside Iwagakure. Soon they would be ready for it all. His men had occupied the merchant wagon from Fire Country that they found out was heading to Konoha. When they arrived, the Leaf would be in for quite a shock for the contents of the wagon, which would be the opposite of what they would expect. The war that his lord had envisioned would soon be realized. And then all shall bow down and serve Jashin. At Konoha. God damn it, this is freaking ridiculous. Hello. Does anyone hear us? Tayuya shouted loudly as her patience was at an end. They had been stuck here in this lousy cell for hours and no one had showed up at all. Those assholes can go screw themselves for all I care. Screw themselves right up the. Tayuya, calm down, Naruto said to her, although he had to admit his own patience was wearing thin. They had been stuck here for hours and not one person had entered through the door. He was ready to use the Kyuubi's power to bust out of here soon if they didn't. Tayuya sat down on the bench in her cell, a scowl on her face. Naruto glanced around at the others. Sakin was pacing around his cell, a frown on his own face. Kidomaru was hanging upside down off the bars and Kimimaro was meditating on the floor as the Kage hadn't said a word ever since they had been taken in. Suddenly the door opened and a bright light flashed in. Naruto covered his eyes as it having been in the dark for so long got blinded by it. He removed his hand and saw a white-haired man walking towards his cell. "Hey kid, ready to clear your name?" Jiraiya asked him. "I need to talk with the Hokage. I got important information for her, it concerns both Konoha and Sound." Naruto said to him as he had been trying to get them so he could talk with her. "I understand, and that's why I'm here. Tsunade wants to see you herself. So let me get you out of this cell and we'll go." Jiraiya replied as he unlocked it. Naruto stepped out of the cell and joined him and then looked at the others. "What about the others, aren't they coming?" he asked him, who shook his head. "Sorry, but she didn't tell me to take them as well." "Well, if they aren't going then I'm not going. I don't go anywhere without my teammates and friends and I'm not leaving them down here to rot," he said to him, and Jiraiya looked at him. "They'll be fine, Naruto, trust me, after this is over with they will be released as well." "Sorry, but unless they all come with me then I'm not going, she can visit me down here instead." "I'll be waiting," Naruto said. Jiraiya looked at him a bit off guard. He certainly didn't get that from his father. Must have been from his mother's side. Knowing that if he returned with nothing Tsunade would do grievous damage to him. He sighed and shrugged. What was the worst that could happen? After all, she didn't say to leave them down here. "Fine, alright, I'll unlock the rest and then all of you come up with me." "Is that fine?" he said, yielding to him. Naruto nodded at him and he went over and unlocked the cells of the others. "It's about damn time," Yuya muttered as she stepped out and along with the rest joined up with Naruto. Going with the old man, the Sound Five exited the prison and soon found themselves upstairs and coming to a door. Jiraiya then turned to face Naruto. "I know you have something important to tell her, but remember kid, the council will be here as well and you can bet they aren't pleased to see you. Just don't try anything stupid and ignore the fools and everything should go well," he said to him. "Your comrades will have to wait by the door but they can watch. Are you ready?" Naruto nodded and then he opened the door. He and Jiraiya entered the room and Naruto gave a last glance back at Yuya and the others as they walked in. The room was the meeting place where the council would meet. The elders and head of the clans of the village sat at their designated spot and Naruto noticed as he walked in that many of them had scowls and looks of disgust on their faces at seeing him, especially an old man who had one arm and eye. He walked towards the center of the room with Jiraiya and saw Tsunade, who was wearing the hat and robes of the Hokage, as the Godime watched him, her amber eyes looking directly at him. "Wretched boy, he dares show himself up here again," muttered Danzo to himself as two of his men were standing next to him. He was taken by surprise when his spies had discovered the alias of the boy. After Sai's unfortunate failure to kill him and seeing the wounds he got for doing so, he had decided to wait. The foolish woman will probably pardon him and send him on his way to create more chaos and havoc, he said in a bitter tone as he looked at Tsunade as she started. "What is your name?" Tsunade asked him. Naruto looked at her a bit confused as to why she wanted to know his name. "Naruto Uzumaki, ninja of Oto," he proclaimed as he went along with it. Tsunade looked hard at him. "Earlier you and the others you were traveling with were captured under the accusation of spying on Konoha, is that true?" "No, we were doing nothing of the kind. We had been traveling for days and we just so happened to come near Konoha when they falsely arrested us. We had no intention of." "A likely defense story," a voice interrupted and Danzo stood up. "Lady Tsunade, do you honestly believe for a fact that he and his ilk weren't spying here in an attempt to find weaknesses so that they can use the next time they want to attack us?" he said as he glared at Naruto. Some of the council were muttering to themselves and talking in secret with one another. "Enough Danzo, you are out of place to interrupt, let him continue," Tsunade said and he sat down, never taking his eye off him. Tsunade then looked at Naruto. "You emerged from a secret pathway that has mostly been forgotten. It used to connect the two countries of Earth and Fire. How did you discover that pathway and why did you take that route?" Naruto went to say something when again Danzo interrupted. "Is it not obvious? The snake sent his men to find a way to transport large numbers of men with ease, and the fact that since the path has been mostly forgotten they can attack us with ease. I have seen through his lies, Lady Tsunade, and I can tell just by looking at him that Oto means to attack us again. We should execute him at once." he said, and some of the council murmured. Danzo. Tsunade shouted, a bit annoyed at his constant interruptions. Either let him speak or leave the room. I grow tired of your. Naruto then spoke up. It's okay Tsunade, he isn't bothering me. He then turned his head to look at Danzo, who appeared quite smug right now. But if he continues to not let me defend myself or my friends, he'll find himself with no eyes and no tongue either. He said as his eyes for a brief moment turned red. The threat easily flustered Danzo as a look of anger crossed his face as Naruto had threatened him. His men were by his side trying to calm him down as the old man wasn't used to being threatened. After a few tense moments he calmed down and sat back down. Jiraiya. Although he couldn't help himself, smirked as Naruto had shown he wasn't going to be intimidated by the council. Tsunade herself had a hint of a smile on her own face as she was glad that the kid wasn't going to let himself be walked all over by the council, who were used to doing that. Now then Naruto, tell me why exactly you were going through the path. Naruto nodded at her, glad he wouldn't have to worry about any more interruptions. Me and the others had been sent on a mission to Iwa, the land of Earth, to find out what was going on there. I'm sure you have heard the rumors of large forces marching there. We went there and discovered one such force. They were marching and they were armed and carrying tools ready for battle. This wasn't some tribe preparing to battle another one, we saw them marching through, heading towards what I believed to be Iwagakure itself. Tsunade looked at him. You say so that the force was marching, but for what reason? Naruto looked back at her and then at all the council. War. Earth is preparing for war. They are gathering their strength and will soon march. A silence fell over all of them as some of the council exchanged looks. Tsunade stared at him hard. Do you have any proof that they are? Yes, I have heard the rumor that a village in Fire Country was destroyed. And not long ago the south gate of sound that protects our borders was attacked, and also Wave was attacked as well. You may dismiss them as attacks from bandits and rogue nin, but they are connected, and I am certain that Earth is the one behind all this. During our mission we were chased into a cave and we discovered that it led to the lost mines and city of Shuchuang. Looks of surprise appeared on their faces as they all had heard of the once great city that was underground. We found out what is happening in Earth. The Rock Cage, whoever he is gathering his forces and preparing for war. A war against us all, with the single goal and purpose to not only destroy Sound but Konoha and everyone else as well. Silence flowed through the room still as many of the council exchanged glances. Except for Danzo, who was scowling. This is foolishness, he said, standing up and drawing attention. Do you honestly believe this son of a snake? He is a liar and a deceiver. Look what he did at the exams. Do you honestly believe that we are going to believe that Earth, who has long been our friend, to be preparing for war, and the words coming through your forked tongue? We should execute you on the spot for your. I am telling the truth, you stupid old fool. Naruto shouted, and the tone of his voice surprised them and startled Danzo. What is it with you and the rest of Konoha? Do you have a kunai stuck up your asses or something? I am getting tired of you all accusing me of being a monster when all you do is hide behind your desk. You wanna hate me? Then hate me, I don't give a damn right now if you do. But you will listen to what I have to say. Earth is preparing for war and I intend to head back home and tell my father, who will actually do something to prepare for it. If any of you won't believe me, then that's fine, but here's a question. He said, and he looked at them all. When Earth is on your doorsteps with thousands of troops armed and ready for battle, what will you do? He let his words hang over their heads as the room was quiet. At the gates of Konoha, a wagon was being pulled in. It appeared to be a merchant wagon and was easily allowed entry to Konoha. But it had no horses, as it was instead being pulled by 4 men who pushed the wagon into the village. The group of 4 was quiet as they did their work. They wore brown cloaks with a hood and a cowl to cover their faces, as they had themselves covered in secret. As they pushed the wagon past the gates and near the center of the village, one of them peered inside the wagon at their cargo as it was filled with barrels. Reaching in, he tipped one over and knocked off the lid as a liquid fell onto the floor and onto the other barrels. He then got out a bag with and poured what appeared to be some kind of dark powder onto the barrels. He then got out of the wagon. Looking around to see that no one was watching them, the leader of the group nodded as they were in a perfect spot. Suddenly a barking noise was heard and the 4 saw a small dog barking at them. The dog was frowning and growling at them as he barked. They hissed at the dog as the dog continued barking at them. Akamaru, what's the matter with you? A boy with red markings on his face and wearing a coat said as he walked up to the dog and picked him up. Orochimaru continued barking and tried to wriggle away. Hey, what's your problem? Ch51-55 asked. He looked up at the four men. Sorry about this, I don't know what's gotten into him. The four men hissed at him in anger and Kiba found himself creeped out by them. Also he noticed a odd smell as well. Orochimaru however continued barking. Will you knock it off? What do you mean there's something odd about them? I know they looked funny but there's no need to bark at them like they stole your favorite chew toy. Kiba said as he understood what the dog was saying. Apparently something about them the dog didn't like. Oh come on now, Ma and Sis are gonna kill me if I don't get home soon. Now shut up already. Clutching the dog he started to walk away wondering what had gotten into him. The four mysterious men then each produced an unlit torch as they brought them up and light them. Konoha shall burn for the glory of Jashin. The leaders shouted and nodding at one another they then threw them inside the wagon. Suddenly an explosion consumed the wagon and the four men as they were consumed by flames which leapt up high into the sky shocking and horrifying the onlookers and people that were passing through at what they had just seen. The flames leapt high into the air as people backed away in fear that they might also be set ablaze. Nothing of the wagon or the four men was left as the stunned onlookers watched on in horror. At the council room Naruto was waiting for them to answer him when a loud rumbling noise was heard startling and surprising all of them. An earthquake, Tayuya said as she and the others looked around but it then stopped. A ninja then charged past them and into the room. Tsunade-sama, the man said as he was out of breath. There has been an explosion, and someone has set fire to buildings in Konoha. What? Tsunade shouted in shock as she stood up along with the rest of the council. Naruto then walked up to her as the rest of the council was speaking and some exiting the room. Still don't believe me? Do you really think that Earth won't attack you just because you're the leaf? You may not like me or my father Tsunade but you have to listen to me when I say that we may all be in danger. Tsunade looked at the boy as she saw Jiraiya walk up towards her. Very well then Naruto, I shall send you and the others back to Oto now and tell Orochimaru what you saw. However we will not mobilize our forces as we have no proof that your words are true. I do pray however that you are wrong, cause if you are right, this shall be another great ninja war, and trust me kiddo when I say this, you do not want to experience or see the same things I did when I was your age. Naruto nodded and turned to Tayuya and the others. Come on we need to head home and tell Otosan that sound must prepare itself against Earth. The four nodded at him and they ran out of the room as they prepared to head back towards Oto and tell them everything that had happened and what they must prepare for. At Iwagakure, a messenger hawk landed on the broad shoulder of Lu Xiang and he removed the message from it and handed it to Sima Zun. The strategist smiled when he read it. The kamikaze attack on Konoha was a success. He said out loud to them all in the room. Kage Sosano seated on his throne laughed evilly. Good, our forces are gathering and our strength is increasing. Konoha itself shall not be spared from Jashin's will. Now is the time for the old world to end and the new world to begin. He then stepped out of the room and onto a balcony and outside was thousands upon thousands of people from Earth who had gathered and heeded his call. A dark smile appeared on his face as he looked down on them all as they were prepared. Prepared for a war that will cover all the land in the darkness of Jashin's shadow.